In 1915, the First World War had already swallowed millions of lives, yet military leaders believed one bold strike could end the suffering quickly. The Allied powers turned their attention to the Dardanelles, a narrow stretch of water guarding the Ottoman capital of Constantinople. They believed that breaking through this gateway would shatter the Ottoman Empire and open a supply route to their Russian allies. On maps, the Gallipoli Peninsula appeared manageable, almost insignificant. In reality, it was a brutal landscape of jagged hills, narrow ridges, and exposed beaches. The ground favored defenders, not invaders. Ottoman forces, aware of the strategic value of this land, prepared silently, digging trenches and fortifying high ground with limited but determined resources. Many Ottoman soldiers were barely trained, some still teenagers. They carried outdated rifles and wore thin uniforms, yet they possessed something the invaders lacked, an understanding of the land and the belief that defeat would mean the loss of their homeland. For them, this was not a distant battlefield, it was home. In the early hours of April 25, 1915, Allied warships loomed offshore as landing boats were lowered into the dark sea. Soldiers sat shoulder to shoulder, gripping rifles, some praying, others staring silently into the water. None knew exactly what awaited them on the beaches ahead. As the first boats reached shore, Ottoman machine guns erupted. The calm sea turned violent in seconds. Men fell before stepping onto land. Bodies drifted in the water as others stumbled over them, trying desperately to move forward while bullets tore through flesh and wood alike. Australian and New Zealand troops landed at the wrong location, later known as Anzac Cove. Steep cliffs rose sharply before them, turning the landing into chaos. Officers shouted conflicting orders as soldiers climbed under relentless fire, using bayonets and bare hands to pull themselves upward. Above them waited Ottoman defenders led by Mustafa Kemal, a disciplined and resolute commander. Understanding the importance of the high ground, he ordered his men to hold their positions at all costs. He told them he was not ordering them to fight, but to die if necessary, buying time for reinforcements. That single decision changed history. The Allied advance was halted within hours. What was meant to be a swift victory became a desperate struggle for survival. Soldiers dug shallow trenches wherever they could, sometimes just yards from enemy lines. As days passed, the peninsula transformed into a frozen hell. The sun scorched during the day, and cold winds cut through uniforms at night. Water was scarce, food was rationed, and wounded men often lay unattended for hours or days. Disease spread rapidly through overcrowded trenches. Dysentery, typhoid, and infections killed almost as many soldiers as enemy fire. Flies swarmed endlessly, feeding on unburied bodies and open wounds, turning survival into a daily battle against nature itself. Repeated Allied assaults were ordered despite poor planning and exhausted troops. Soldiers charged knowing the odds were hopeless. Machine gun fire cut down entire lines in seconds, leaving the ground layered with fallen men who could not be retrieved. Ottoman forces suffered just as deeply. Supplies were limited, medical care was primitive, and casualties mounted. Yet they held their ground, fueled by discipline and the belief that retreat meant disaster for their nation. In August, the Allies launched a massive new offensive, hoping fresh landings would finally break the stalemate. Once again, confusion ruled. Units landed in darkness, lost direction, and advanced without support. The battles at Lone Pine and Chunic Bear became symbols of sacrifice. Soldiers fought hand to hand in trenches filled with smoke, blood, and shattered earth. Victories were measured in meters, and each meter cost lives. Letters sent home spoke of honor and courage, but rarely of fear. Many soldiers hid the truth from their families, knowing the pain it would cause. Others never wrote again, their final words lost with them on the battlefield. As winter approached, conditions worsened. Torrential rain flooded trenches, followed by freezing temperatures. Men suffered frostbite and hypothermia, wrapped in wet blankets with no shelter from the cold. By late 1915, Allied leaders faced reality. The campaign had failed. Thousands were dead, and nothing of strategic value had been gained. Continuing would only mean more loss with no victory. Planning began for evacuation, a move as dangerous as the landing itself. Silence became the greatest weapon. Soldiers were ordered to reduce movement, lower gunfire, and prepare to leave without alerting the enemy. Ingenious methods were used to disguise the retreat. Rifles were rigged to fire automatically using dripping water cans, creating the illusion that trenches were still occupied. Night after night, troops slipped away under cover of darkness. Boats arrived silently, carrying men who had survived months of horror. Not a single life was lost during the evacuation, making it the most successful operation of the campaign. When Ottoman soldiers finally advanced, they found empty trenches and abandoned equipment. Victory belonged to them, but it was a victory soaked in grief. Too many lives had been lost to celebrate. The Gallipoli campaign ended in January 1916. Over 100,000 soldiers were dead, and hundreds of thousands were wounded. The scale of suffering shocked nations across the world. For the Ottoman Empire, Gallipoli became a symbol of resistance and survival. Mustafa Kemal emerged as a national hero, later becoming the founder of modern Turkey. For Australia and New Zealand, Gallipoli marked a turning point. The Anzac legend was born, not from victory, but from endurance, courage, and shared loss. Families waited for sons who would never return. Graves were often unmarked, bodies never recovered. Names were carved into stone instead of written in letters home. The campaign exposed the cost of poor leadership and blind optimism. Generals planned from distant offices while soldiers paid the price in blood. Gallipoli proved that war was not glorious. It was confusion, suffering, and irreversible loss hidden behind patriotic words. Today, the peninsula is quiet. Grass covers trenches, and waves gently strike the same beaches once stained red. Birds fly where shells once screamed. Memorials stand where soldiers fell, reminding visitors that history is written not only by decisions, but by lives lost because of them. Gallipoli remains a warning carved into the earth itself, a reminder that war remembers every name, even when the world tries to forget.